mystery, the magic, the game. Quest 64, the new adventure RPG for Nintendo 64.
Ooh.
Get in or get out.
Quest 64 is not a good game. You probably figured that out by now because of, all of that. I'm not the first one to say that it's a bad game, but I might be the last. There's not a lot of people holding a candle for this particular train wreck. In fact, I think the only games more reviled in the entirety of the Nintendo 64 canon are Buck Bumble and Glover. And at least Buck Bumble has that theme song, which fucking slaps. Glover, on the other hand, has
Just throw the ball, Glover. It's your one mechanic. Just throw the fucking...
If people remember Quest 64 at all, it's probably for its box art, which promises a grand adventure filled with dragons, hellhounds, and orcs who wear hoods, gloves, and absolutely nothing else. Are those veins? A promise that the game, unfortunately, can't deliver on.
You promised me orc nips, Quest. Where are my orc nips?
Quest 64 is a middling RPG with borderline broken mechanics and a protagonist so boring, they named him Brian. Yeah! Take that, Brian Alford, contributor to this channel and trusted friend.
I think I left the stove on.
And boy, oh boy, is it a slog to get through. The game is somehow simultaneously 10 hours long and 100 hours long, though, to be fair, I'm not sure if that's the game or the pandemic, because my sense of time died somewhere around March 47th, 2000 in purple. Do you smell toast? It's a game so generic, one of your most reliable attacks is just hitting everything with a stick. It's a game that's neither bad enough to be gawked at, nor interesting enough to be studied. And I can't stop thinking about it.
Quest 64 is a lonely game. It's filled with long stretches of running across empty fields with nothing but your thoughts and a soundtrack that will burrow into your brain and stay there. And at first, I thought the emptiness was a bug, a reflection of the limitations of the hardware. But the more I played, the more I realized the emptiness isn't a bug, it's a feature. Because Quest 64 isn't about dragons or hellhounds or orcs who are very particular about their fashion.
It's a game about grief. Oh, are we not doing the titles here? I mean, I thought that was sort of the perfect segue, but no, okay, no, it's fine. I'll just go on. Quest...
Quest 64 is one of the crazier clusterfucks ever seen in video game development, and that's saying something, coming from the industry that greenlit a game
where a bee shoots a gun.
Itsy bitsy spider went up the water spout. Along came Buck Bumble and wiped the spider out.
Say hello to Buck Bumble.
And don't get me started on that dandy candy Canadian handy. That's not where the ball goes, Crispin. Now don't look at me, it's not over there. Get the ball. Get the, oh, and he's lied down. Oh, he's all tuckered out. Oh, Glover.
Even the name Quest 64 was originally just a placeholder title, with the project at various points being referred to as L-Tale, Crystal Stories, Holy Magic Century, its eventual European title, and finally Quest 64 in the States. It's a game that went through revisions even post-release, with the European port of Holy Magic Century remaining by all accounts mostly the same, and the Japanese port L-Tale monsters receiving quality of life improvements such as more item drops and significantly more stat increases per battle.
It's a game that seems, at different points in its development, to be completely different versions of itself. And this identity crisis can be traced back to one enormous, spiky-haired, endlessly smoochable elephant in the room. More like Smoocheroth, am I right? Am I right? See, Quest 64 wouldn't exist without Final Fantasy VII, and to understand why, we have to examine one of the greatest creative uncouplings in the history of the medium, the breakup of Square and Nintendo.
For almost the entirety of its existence, Square had been Nintendo's prized third-party developer. The Super Nintendo's legacy, apart from, solidifying the longevity of Nintendo's IPs with truly amazing games, rests mainly on the shoulders of the titans Square created. Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy VI, Super Mario RPG, Legend of the Seven Stars, fucking Secret of Mana? All established the SNES as the console for JRPGs.
But then Mummy and Daddy took a terrible tumble.
It's Basil Bad-Newsington. Oh yes, it's Basil, and now his news is done.
Nintendo and Square went their separate ways, and it was all over the cartridge system.
Also, by the way, special thanks to Cassidy over at Bad Game Hall of Fame. Their article on Quest 64 is, I believe, the definitive review of the game, and was incredibly helpful in terms of providing context for its creation. So, I highly recommend you visit their page. The link's in the description. They are great. Please support them. Truly can't wait to see if they ever cover the story behind.
So, Nintendo loved cartridges, and by loved cartridges, I mean they wanted to blow them till they would fucking load. Nintendo was convinced that the only way to protect their games from being pirated was to have complete control of the product from inception to shipping, and their supply chain only included cartridge manufacturers, so even if they wanted to release games on disc, they would have had to have paid a significant amount of money to have an outside company do it for them, which, in their minds, had the potential to lead to more piracy. Nintendo, and I can't stress this enough, hates pirates. More on that later. Stick around, we have how much longer? This was all well and good during the era of the SNES when cartridges were the only game in town, but then Sony threw its hat into the home console ring, debuting the PlayStation with a CD-ROM system that could be produced cheaper than cartridges and hold more data. The choice was pretty clear. Square had ambitions for Final Fantasy VII that the old cartridge system simply couldn't handle. You can't make a game that smoochable with only 64 megabytes of data. That's what my grandfather used to say. So the companies broke up. Nintendo, once long revered as the keeper of the JRPG, was left without one of their most trusted collaborators. To make matters worse, when Square left, they convinced their BFFs at Enix, the maestros behind the Dragon Quest games, to also abandon Nintendo. They needed an RPG of their own, one that would show just how powerful a cartridge RPG could be and how much they didn't need Square. Enter Imagineer, a developer known mostly for porting computer games onto the SNES. They threw their hat into the ring, promising an ambitious RPG that would not only challenge but potentially unseat Final Fantasy as the reigning champion of the role-playing world. They did not succeed.
Quest 64 opens with a PowerPoint, title crawl. We're thrown headlong into exposition about our magical adventure set in the mythical world of Celtland, based on... Can you guess? Celtland? King Scott Fort? What could it possibly be? The three kingdoms of Kenishir, Karma, and Highland.
There can be only one.
All signed a treaty ages ago after the, hang on, Day of Grief?
That seems...
and have lived in relative peace ever since. You find out over the course of the game that this peace is mostly for show. King Beegis in the southernmost kingdom of Highland,
there can be only one,
we know, is gearing up for war because the Elatail book,
yes, Elatail, not L-tail, even though in the Japanese version, it's spelled without the E. In the American and European versions, which came first, it's spelled Elatail, which means it was a purposeful choice, and I have been banging my head against the wall for months, trying to figure out the significance of that extra E. I mean, what dramaturgical justification could there have been for the removing of one letter? But then I got to thinking, I was like, ooh, E is the 5th letter of the alphabet, and in the original build of Quest, there was supposed to be a mysterious 5th element, so maybe it's in reference to that, and no, I haven't been outside in 3 weeks. Stop bothering me, Mom!
So the Elatail book has gone missing, and with this all-powerful tome MIA, Beegis sees an opportunity to wage war on the other 2 kingdoms.
This synopsis makes the game sound a lot more fleshed out than it is. You don't even hear about Beegis until you're basically at his doorstep, which is a common occurrence in Quest. Things don't become problems until right before you encounter them.
You reach the city of Dondarin, and the king there tells you the Earth Orb has been stolen and you have to get it back. You don't hear about the Windjade's disappearance until you hit Normoon. The events of the game don't feel inevitable as much as hastily assembled. Obstacles simply appear on your path to reunite with your father.
Oh no. Did I not mention your dad yet? That's the titular quest. Did anyone edit this?
As previously mentioned, you play as Brian, a 12-year-old magician's apprentice whose father, Lord Bartholomew, a name seemingly derived from Saint Bartholomew, who among other things is the patron saint of... Oh, fuck. Has gone after whoever stole the Elatail book. Bartholomew is yet to return from his, quest, and the monks of his monastery, including,
and I cannot stress this enough,
Marmaduke the monk, fear the worst. Your quest is to go after your father and find out who stole the book and why.
And so Brian sets off into the wild world, armed with nothing but his cloak, his hitty stick, and the ability to summon teensy geysers of water from the ground. I think the last time I played this game, I was around 9 years old, and I believe we have proof. Great. Burn every copy. What's that? We can't. It's on the internet now? The internet is forever. Oh no! Back then, Brian being 12 didn't feel like a weird thing. Like, it felt like when I turned 12, I would also be wandering the countryside and finding dragons and orcs and werehares and hitting them with a stick. But playing it now, some 21 years later, the thing that strikes me most is how terribly young Brian is. A lot of people give the game flack for not having any sort of economy. There's no currency to collect, no weapons to upgrade, no healing items to purchase. And while this was probably a cost-saving measure and another feature left on the cutting room floor, the result makes for a pretty interesting bit of storytelling. The shopkeepers give Brian supplies not because of a lack of an economy. They're doing it because he's just a little kid, forced into a quest far bigger than anyone his age should ever be expected to shoulder. There's a theory I have that every work of art, no matter how mediocre, has at least one great insight that helps reveal something about the world. And in Quest 64, it comes in a throwaway line from the magician Epona. You first encounter her in a cabin that you only reach after a truly ludicrous trek through the Blue Cave.
Yo, listen up, here's a story about a little guy that's trapped in a blue cave. And all day and all night and everything he sees is just blue for him and this cave and also all other caves. Where the fuck am I?
You enter her house, she teaches you the magic of teleportation, and off you go to retrieve the water jewel. When you get back, Epona has several lines congratulating you for defeating the boss and pointing you in the right direction, more traditional Quest 64 function over flavor dialogue. But then she says this.
I would not have wished such a thing upon one so young.
And that's when you remember. Oh fuck. He's just a kid. And considering the rest of his journey, you can't help but agree with her. I mean, I wouldn't wish it on a kid so young. I wouldn't wish it on my worst enemy. Speaking of enemies,
there are 7 bosses you fight on your way to the final confrontation with Mammon, the game's big bad, two-eyed, two-horned, flying purple people eater.
I said, Mr. Purple People Eater, what's your line? He said, I eat purple people and it sure is fine. But that's not the reason that I came to land. I want to get a job in a rock and roll band. Yeah!
4 of these bosses guard the elemental gems, magical stones that control the 4 elements of earth, fire, wind, water. 1 is a random servant of Mammon who hangs out in a crypt, she of fame, and the final 2 wait for you in Brannock Castle, King Beegis and his head mage, respectively.
Just gonna put a pin in that guy, so.
Stop it! Let me pin you!
The elemental thieves are, in order, Solvering, a vagabond who believes all men are beasts and should return to nature. Zels, a magician whose obsession with the wind jade corrupts him, causing him to abandon his friends and become a hermit in the woods. Nepti, who, wants to be queen of the world because she's a mermaid, I guess? And Fargo, a murderer who seeks revenge against the state that imprisoned him, and that state is North Dakota.
Welcome, fool. You have done my work for me, bringing me the other 3 precious jewels and all. Oh, watch out there. Those explosions can be a bit feisty. Oh, and I'm dead.
None of the thieves' motivations are particularly complex. The majority of them want power for power's sake and monologue at you about how you won't be able to stop them until the exact moment when you do, in fact, stop them. But for all their simplicity, their designs are incredibly striking, visually distinct, and full of personality. Actually, most enemies in Quest are pretty visually fascinating. From hellhounds to the orcs to the terrifying implications of orc juniors.
Am I killing children? The enemy designs are extremely unique and they all move with distinct personality and charm.
Also, Tom Hooper makes a cameo. But I'd like to focus mainly on the bosses, because if we're going to figure out what makes this game tick, we have to figure out what the hell's going on with Brian.
I'm on a choo-choo. Choo-choo.
No, not that Brian. Though I am worried. Our Brian. You know, Quail Man over here.
The game itself doesn't give us much to go on. Brian was designed to be the player's surrogate after all, so he's intentionally left as a blank slate.
But like all static characters, the best way to figure out what's going on in his adorable little head is to look at what's happening around him.
Take the Earth Orb section. It's kicked off when the vicious thief Solvering sneaks into Dondarin Castle, you know, this master of stealth, and steals the Earth Orb, causing the kingdom, which relies primarily on its pottery, to lose its ability to make clay. This causes a resident of Dondarin, a guy named, Clay, to contemplate suicide. Seriously. The saddest part about all this is even when you restore his ability to make pots again, Clay doesn't seem demonstrably relieved. All he says is,
"It's hard to get the heat right for making pottery. If we don't get help from the fire spirit, the earth spirit won't work properly."
There's a somberness to Clay's storyline. A feeling of grief not overcome, but deferred. Kicked down the line for someone else to worry about. There's a feeling that something is fundamentally broken in this world that pretty much everyone living in it is powerless to stop.
When Brian hits Normoon, the town adjacent to the hiding place of the Windjade, you meet 3 vagabonds, Rick, Oscar, and Kevin. They used to be a quartet, but their 4th member, Zels, recently found a mysterious stone in the woods and disappeared.
It doesn't take Benishuk kombucha bench to deduce that he's the one who stole the wind jade, the consequences of which are stopping the wind entirely, which, whoa. But you know, you do as Brian do, and you beat the ever-living shit out of him till he explodes.
But when you go and talk to his friends in town, they all say how this wasn't his normal line of behavior. How they knew him to be a thief and a rapscallion, sure, but stopping the wind? Like all of the wind? That's some super villainous shit. Rick even wonders aloud if someone else could have been manipulating his actions, some other unknowable force that would make someone push away those closest to him.
Which, if so, makes the exploding him bit a little more tragic?
By the time you get to Brannock Castle and encounter the evil court wizard, a man driven mad by magic, a hulking behemoth named Guilty, which, oh boy. You've already seen a fundamental transformation take place in the game's visual aesthetic. The closer you get to your goal, the darker and more foreboding the world becomes. The blue skies of the monastery are gone, replaced with a perpetual night of dark reds and purples. And Guilty perfectly embodies this tonal shift, because Guilty is a magnificently grotesque boss, more monster than man. But I always found his placement strange. Every area before this has one boss and follows the same formula. You go to a town says thing stolen, you get thing, town saved. But suddenly, after battling through these truly radical knights, you don't encounter Beegis, the evil warmongering king everybody keeps going on about. Instead, you get this Dali nightmare come to life. And while his appearance, both physically and mechanically, is certainly jarring, his placement makes a lot more sense once you see what comes after. You run up some stairs, fight a few more, and I cannot stress this enough, sexy-ass knights, and you find yourself in Beegis' war room, with a map of Keltland in the center. And in the farthest corner, lying in a crumpled heap, is your father, Lord Bartholomew, wounded and panting. He's not the heroic figure he's been built up to be. Not a brave, all-powerful spirit tamer, but a man, broken and dying on the ground. We don't see him again after this, by the way. The game forces us on, because the quest wasn't about getting your father back, not really. It was about dealing with the loss of him in the first place. I keep coming back to what Brian feels in this moment, because it's really glossed over, like a lot in this game. Is it despair? Is it anger? Is it grief? But then I realized the game already told me. Standing over what remains of his father, he doesn't feel sad or angry or depressed. He feels guilty.
Let's talk about Shannon.
Shannon is, I think, the most interesting part of Quest 64. You first encounter her at the inn in Melroad, where she claims to be a fellow traveler, and her presence becomes a familiar totem in strange lands. She usually has some tidbit of information, some town gossip to point you in the right direction, and cheers you on along your journey. Then she mercilessly beats your father to a pulp, because as it turns out, she's the one who stole the Elatail book and has been working for Mammon this whole time.
Look, as far as plot twists go, this is pretty tame, but as a 9-year-old, this blew my fucking mind.
I can recognize now that this isn't a particularly effective twist. If you hadn't talked to her in every location or exhausted all of her dialogue, I could very much see this being a hollow reveal.
But even getting footage for this video, I was struck by how invested I was in her character. See, Shannon is a... Wait a minute. Shannon. Mammon.
Ketchup. 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 I'm in way over my head.
See, Shannon is a puppet of Mammon.
Her mission is to lead an unsuspecting adventurer to Mammon's prison cell so the demon can escape to the surface world and, you know, destroy it. This on the surface appears to be like yet another woman in video games who lacks any and all agency. I mean, this game is so generic in so many other ways, having bad woman be bad because evil would be pretty par for the course.
But I think the reason that Shannon sticks with me is because she's the only character in the entire game with a, you know, arc.
Right before the final battle with the two-eyed, two-horned flying purple people eater, you encounter Shannon in the nether realm that is Mammon's world. She gives you the key to go and fight her master and sends you on your way. But before you go, she says this.
I knew nothing of the real world and its foolish people who are doomed to die. But why are humans so strong? With all their grief, sorrow, happiness, and anger, why do they shine so brightly?
And after defeating Mammon, you return to that same space. But instead of being destroyed along with him, Shannon is still there, a puppet without a master.
I have made a decision. I want to learn more of your human ways. I'm leaving Keltland in order to meet as many people as I can. Perhaps, if I experience enough, I too may find my own humanity.
The story of Quest 64 doesn't end with a reunion with your father, who, in the American release, is never seen nor mentioned again, but with an instrument of evil vowing to find her humanity. Shannon, in my estimation, is the clearest example of the storytelling going on under the surface of this game. Shannon is a puppet who is able to escape her shackles and become her true self. But that begs the question, what is she shackled to? What is Mammon? Evil, sure, I mean, look at him. He's like if the Sega Knight did meth. But I think Mammon is a stand-in for something else entirely.
I think Mammon represents grief. Okay, everybody, strap in and start calling me Hugh, because we're about to get a little Lori up in here. Like Hugh Laurie. We are going to talk about the lore of Quest 64. More like Quest 60 lore. Is anyone still watching this?
1,000 years ago, before the founding of the Three Kingdoms, all of Keltland's provinces were at war with each other trying to get their hands on the Eletail book. The leader of one of the provinces, a powerful wizard named Lavar...
Hi. No, not that one. That one. Got his hands on a book.
It's in a book.
Not that one.
Unfortunately, instead of granting him unlimited power, the Eletail book only granted Lavar the power to destroy.
The only powers I could control were those of famine and destruction. I could hate, but not love. I could terrify, but not inspire.
This led to a cataclysmic event known as the Day of Grief, where Lavar's entire province was wiped out of existence. Its once rich green fields reduced to a barren desert filled with death and misery.
And sexy cat ladies.
For we will do as he did do. There's no doing anything about it.
Lavar was exiled to the forgotten city of Shamwood by the magician Epona, forced to be
alone for all eternity, or until the evil that we call Mammon is defeated.
When I talk about Quest being a lonely game, it's not just the lack of party members. It's baked in the suffering of its characters.
We never find out what happens to Lavar. The hope, of course, is that Mammon's defeat means he can finally be released from that ethereal prison. But the blight that was left across the kingdom, the gaping wound at the center of the continent remains. A lot of Quest 64 feels very corridory. Your path is pretty linear, some people might argue to a fault.
I am one of those people.
It's blue, it's so blue I could die. Oh, won't you please let me die? Won't you please let me die? Won't you please let me die? Oh, let me play, let me die. Let me play, let me die.
But when you reach Dindum Dries, the ruins of Lavar's old kingdom, the world opens up into a vast emptiness. You feel the loss of the Day of Grief here. And as Brian, your quest is, at least partially, to help right that historical wrong, and in the process, conquer your own grief. This story is fascinating, and the implications of it still get to me while writing this. The great tragedy of Quest 64 is that the potential of this narrative is never fully realized in the final product. Because while all this sounds wonderful on paper, in execution, well... This game is so boring. I mean, look at it, look at it, look at it, look at it! In the Nintendo Power review of Quest 64, a man identified only as Henry gives one of the most lacerating reviews I've ever seen of a video game.
It's more like a trip to the dentist than a quest.
Which, remember, is coming from Nintendo Power. Nintendo Power, the magazine built exclusively to hype up Nintendo products, accidentally did a good gaming journalism. You did it, guys! Go home! Have a vacation! You nerds deserve it! And what's that? Nintendo Power magazine doesn't exist anymore. But they never published my letter about how I imagine Luigi eats a biscotti. What's that? Nintendo Power exists as a podcast now? And they've kindly asked me to stop sending them voice memos where I slowly describe how I imagine Luigi eats spaghetti? But how will the world ever know how I think Luigi eats a biscotti? Oh no. Mamma mia.
To give a sense of what Henry Nintendo Power is talking about, I'm going to play an uninterrupted clip of Brian running through Barragoon Tunnel. Most of the game is just that, over and over and over again. The dungeons, if you can call them that, are just straight lines interrupted every couple steps by another battle. And look, random encounters aren't necessarily a bad thing. If the combat is good enough and the encounters are spaced far enough apart, the early RPG equivalent of a jump scare could actually be an effective way to show your character slowly growing more powerful as you experiment with the game's unique systems and figure out the best strategies.
And when starting a new area before the random encounter fatigue sets in, it's kind of fun to encounter all the new monsters. I mean, look at this guy. Who did this to you?
One of the coolest features, at least initially, is the ability to dodge in real time against monster attacks. This guy throwing a boulder at your head? Run right under it. This fancy frog shooting wind blades at you? Run in a circle. This pumpkin man shooting fire arrows at you? I do not know how to dodge this. But really, what ends up happening is the battles are so frequent and so unforgiving that you're always on death's door, and healing is impossible because, inexplicably, the markets only give you one healing item at a time. So, unless you're invested heavily in the water spells, which you absolutely have to be in order to survive, your only recourse is to fight like 3 battles, die, return to the inn, go out, fight those same 3 battles, die, and repeat until you wise up and get the healing spell, which at level 1 only heals you 4 health at a time,
So after any given battle, you have to heal yourself 4 or 5 times to get back to regular health because these monsters hit hard. So most of your playtime is spent standing around healing yourself, which all could have been avoided with either a more powerful healing spell out of the gate or just more people able to give you healing items. But making matters infinitely worse is that since it's only you for the entire game, you're often thrown into battles with multiple enemies, and while you have multiple targets to choose from, they only have you. So all their attacks relentlessly hound you. There is something certainly poetic about every boss battle being essentially a duel between you and someone who should absolutely not be trying to murder a child. But again, with no distractions or meaningful way to heal, your only means of survival is killing them before they get too many hits in, or trying to heal yourself in between attacks. But since the healing spell heals so pitifully little, you end up taking the amount of damage you healed for in literally the next round. So you get trapped in this endless loop of healing yourself and getting hurt and healing yourself and getting hurt again. And do you see how broken this is? But then, you discover the win button. So there's this move called Avalanche. And it is beautiful. You get it once you level up your Earth stat to level 24, and it annihilates everything. In combination with Magic Barrier, which you get at level 36, it absolutely breaks the game. See, Magic Barrier makes you impervious to magic in a game where every creature attacks you with magic. So, you cast Magic Barrier, run close to your competition, hit Avalanche, and ta-da! You win! You win forever! These boulders raining from the sky like goddamn Ragnarok, though? Chef's fucking kiss? Speaking of chefs and their tiny baby kisses, let's talk about the music. Like the battle system, the score has some pretty high highs and depressingly low lows. The battle theme itself is rip-roaring, perfectly balancing both danger and excitement. It's a banger. The different city themes are equally dynamic, growing darker and more twisted as you make your way towards Mammon's cell. Here's the bright score of the opening field, ringing with the promise of adventure to come. And here's the music of the militaristic land of Brannock. You can practically feel the soot growing in your lungs. The problem is, of course, because you're stopping every couple seconds to battle, you don't get to hear the area themes in their entirety. In fact, the battle theme is played so much that you'll start hearing it everywhere.
Hey, buddy. I've been trying to reach you. Don't know why you're not picking up. Grandma's funeral is this week, and I know it'd mean a lot to your mom, if you came. So, call me back, okay? Bye.
On the whole, the character design and music come out of this game pretty unscathed, which is... No, don't worry about that. It's fine. I'm fine. What's important, is Quest 64, okay? We're on a quest. We don't have time for what could have been. So, let's talk about the next topic. What's that? Oh, come on! Playing through Quest, you can't help but yearn for all the features that were lost along the way. If you've been watching the video up until now, which I hope you have because what a weird place to start, you'll notice that there's a day and night cycle. If you stay outdoors long enough, you can see the sunset and then rise again.
But nothing else happens. The monsters stay the same. The townsfolk don't move, no dialogue changes, it's just dark now.
But initially, there were plans to have villagers appear at different places at different times. Sure, it wouldn't have been Shenmue.
Nothing disappointing about Shenmue.
But if you saw a guy standing outside of a bar and you came back later, you would see that same guy outside of a bar, but this time, very drunk. Which is actually pretty cool.
I think that adding these villagers would have given you ample reason to revisit areas and actually make use of the wing mechanic, which allows you to instantly teleport back to any area you've already visited. As it stands, once you get the Wind Jade, there's really no reason to go back to Normoon, unless you want to talk to Kevin again. Remember Kevin? With the nightmare face?
Remember when I said having other party members would greatly alleviate the pains of combat? Well, as Cassidy points out in their article, there's 2 NPCs who seem to be begging to be party members.
In Dondarin, there's Princess Flora, a swashbuckler at heart who wants nothing more than adventure and excitement. So she tells you to go and do it for her. Just come with me, Flora. Give the frogmen something else to hit, please! And then there's this pirate captain, Kiliak, whose armor and devil-may-care attitude, to say nothing of his swooping hair, would have made him an amazing tank character.
The craziest part is, they both almost were party members.
In the initial marketing, back when it was still very much in development, Brian was going to be one of 3 party members, acting as the mage class. Flora, or as she was known back then, Nina, would have been a warrior cleric of sorts, while Kiliak, known as Cozy, would act as the tank class. The plot of the game was also radically different. An evil wizard named Larva, who in my estimation probably looked a lot like Lavar, unleashes the evils onto the world, mysterious creatures that feed on the 7 deadly sins of men. Your job, as our trio of heroes, would be to bring him down and bring balance back to the elements.
Which actually sounds pretty awesome. Look, I'm not saying it's revolutionary or anything, and sure, the way they describe Nina is...
Nina, a sassy princess who, even though she's only 13 and moves like she was modeling on the catwalk.
But there's the seed of a pretty interesting story-focused experience here, and part of me would love to see Nina group healing the party while Kiliak goes after a goblin with his axe and Brian casts magic barrier to protect his perfect pirate boy. But they cut him. Because, as we all know,
Nintendo hates pirates. Oh, yeah.
Brian himself also went through a lot of changes during the 2-year development. Hell, he wasn't even called Brian until very late in the process. Initially, he would be named by the player, like most JRPG protagonists of the time, but was renamed in order Jean-Jacques, Jack, John, and finally, Brian.
Which goes to prove you usually only need 1 rewrite, because you do 5 and you end up with Brian, the worst of all possible names. Ha! Suck it, Brian, trusted collaborator and terrible name haver. How you doing? How you feeling? You feeling burnt?
I think you should probably call your dad back.
No, it's fine. He's fine.
I'm very worried about you. Josh is also worried. Isn't that right, Josh? Josh.
Hey, what's up, dudes? I'm just eating my nudes. Slurping my nudes, what I call my noodles. My nude with tudes. You know what I'm saying? Dudes. AJ, what is this?
What?
Don't be a prude, dude. Just eat my crude, stewed nudes. Is this what you think I sound like?
No, rhyming is funny.
No, it's not. No, rhyming is a desperate cry for help. Have you ever seen a happy lyricist?
Tim Rice seems pretty happy.
Tim Rice can choke on a dick and fucking die.
Okay. No more writing for each other. New rule. And rule number 2, AJ, pick up the phone, call your dad.
I can't.
You can't just keep not dealing with this, dude.
I don't know why I like this game. You know, a lot of the time it feels like I'm romanticizing things, like my nostalgia is a weapon being used against me. I don't know. See, the thing about grief is that sometimes you don't even know you're in it till you're in it, and by then it feels too late. That the only way to go is deeper. Which brings us to the final level of quest, and the best snapshot, I think, of the game that could have been, because Mammon's World fucking slaps.
There's nothing quite like playing through Mammon's World for the first time. It's a series of impossible structures floating in a vast emptiness. Nothing in the game looks quite like it. Until it does. The entire level, you get the sense that you're trespassing, that you absolutely should not be here, that you've stumbled upon a dark secret that you've kept even from yourself. There's an uncanniness to revisiting almost every major location in the game, every one with a different color palette and empty of all life except you, some monsters, and the blistering dark. Those monsters, by the way, are some of the most formidable and creative in the entire game. My personal favorite being Judgment, an unfinished stone statue that moves like a malevolent chess piece and hurls storms of rocks at you. But the most striking aspect of Mammon's World is how there are long stretches where you run with no interruptions, where you sit alone with your thoughts, where you're forced to contemplate the abyss. Until, once again, you meet Epona. She greets you with,
"I've been waiting for you. From this point on, no one will be able to help you."
which, whew. The world of Mammon is made up of Brian's old memories. It's not just that it's a warped version of Braddock or Normoon or Larapool. It's that it's specifically a place that Brian himself visited. Mammon's world isn't a dark reflection of Keltland proper. It's a dark reflection of Brian's memories of Keltland.
We're not on some ethereal plane. We're in Brian's thoughts, battling through his demons, and the only person to know his pain and to see him as the child that he is there to help him one last time. Because at a certain point, no one can help you but you. So, you take a breath, you jump in,
and you fight Mammon. You cast Magic Barrier, you use Avalanche, lather, rinse, repeat, until he dies. Brian conquers his grief.
So why can't you?
Quest 64 ends with another title crawl, which has the same vibe, honestly, as Poochie returning to his home planet. There's no real sense of closure beyond the word end. It just kind of stops. The crawl even explicitly states that almost no one in Keltland even knows what Brian did, that his deeds were lost to time. The Japanese release expanded on this ending a bit, giving a better sense of closure for Brian and feeling less like a cost-cutting measure and more like, an actual ending. But the ending we got in the States isn't great, and along with the intro title sequence, just seems like the development team ran out of time or money, or honestly both.
Quest 64 did solid numbers, so much so that a sequel was put into production, but eventually scrapped, which is a shame. There's something so good and pure at the heart of this game that if given a second chance and more resources, it could have made for a really interesting franchise.
As it stands, all we got was Quest Fantasy Challenge, a Dig Dug clone, which,
what? And Quest Brian's Journey, which is a demake of the first game for the Game Boy Color that added a bit more story and hey, gave Brian actual lines of dialogue. Hooray! But in terms of notoriety, Quest 64 is really where the franchise begins and ends for most people, if people remember it at all. The final title crawl became weirdly prophetic for the game itself.
Only a few people know that Keltland was saved from disaster by a young magician's apprentice.
And I guess I'm just one of those people. My grandma and I never had the best relationship. She was a difficult person to love, or rather, her love was conditional, predicated on unwavering loyalty and following orders. German, you get it. She got me this game, Quest 64, for Christmas 1998, and playing through it now, it's hard not to think of her. Even though our relationship was strained, I always hoped that one day it could be repaired, and above everything else, her dying makes me not so much mourn her loss, but the loss of that potential. I don't know. I guess what I'm trying to say is, Quest 64 is not a good game. But it could have been a great one. Hi everybody, thank you so much for making it to the end of the video. This is actually my first video essay, so I guess I'm a YouTuber now. Hit the like button, leave a comment down there if you want to continue the discussion. Smash the subscribe button, or like lightly tap it, it's very fragile. I'm part of a video essay collective called The Worst of All Possible Worlds, and we like making video essays about things that don't necessarily produce the most ad revenue. So if you'd like to support us and you like this video and you want to see more of it in the future, we set up a Patreon, which I'll put right over here. Bam! Patreon.com/worstofall. Please go there and throw us a couple extra bucks, and we'll give you some stuff in return, like some behind the scenes footage, some bloops, some sweet, sweet bloops. I made a lot of bloops making this ending video, I'll tell you that right now. And also announcements for future videos, so you can know what the future of the channel looks like. And I'll tell you, we got some real humdingers coming down the pipeline. The music that you're listening to right now is by Brendan Dalton. He has an album out right now called Christmas in Middle Earth, which is one of my absolute favorite things. The link for it is in the description. Please hire him for all of your music-based needs. Yeah, I guess that's it. I'll see you guys in the next video. In the meantime, I should probably call my dad. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Surprise, I just walked off camera. I fooled you.